So hypothetical scenario, you mentioned you have a son. He came to you and said, Dad, like, I'm thinking of doing a cycle. You'd be cool with that?
Well, he's 28 years old, so that's already happened.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you decide, I tell people, look, if you're thinking about it, look at all the facts. Get as much information as you can, factual information. I mean, when I started doing it in the mid-'80s, there was a couple of underground books that are out there. I mean, photocopied, underground steroid book from Dan Duchesne. That was probably the only thing out. And then there was another book, Anabolic Steroids in Sports, by Dr. James Wright, who, both these guys I actually met as well. That was about it. I mean, there's no internet. No, you know, there's just gym rumors and stuff. And actually, back in the 80s, we were very cautious because we did think, shit, this stuff, you know, I've heard it can damage your liver and all these things. And I was very lucky that I had a doctor that supervised all my blood tests and everything throughout the years. And there was never anything in those blood tests for results for him to show any concern and say, hey, you know, you've got to give it a break or you should stop doing this and everything. But if you've ever seen a film called Supersize Me about a guy that ate McDonald's 3 times a day, after he did that for 2 weeks, his blood results were so off the chart, his doctor was begging him to stop.
Yeah, it's true.
So 2 weeks of eating McDonald's 3 times a day was much worse than me taking steroids for 12 years.
That's interesting.
Did you ever have a hard time sourcing them? Did that ever affect your training?
No. It was you know, they were freely available back in the 80s and 90s, and there's less availability now because in the 80s and 90s what you had was steroids that were produced by legitimate pharmaceutical companies, and there was a lot on, you know, floating around. Now that's pretty much dried up, and all the steroids available now, at least the great majority of them, they're black market, they're underground. So they're made in underground labs. They might be good, they might not be.
Would you take steroids, Brian?
Well, I mean, I was never trying to get huge, you know, but
just naturally huge.
Yeah, right. It just seems so dangerous because it's like in this sport and in many sports, people are going to take them because they're competitive. But there's no science, there's no direction. You're getting them from a guy in the locker room, and then you're tripling it because you're an intense, competitive person. And like, what's the solution to that problem?
I mean, there's a bigger problem now because you don't know really what you're getting. Yeah. I mean, it's usually I guess they're made in sterile circumstances most of the time, but it's not a pharmaceutical company, so you can never be sure of that. And because it's not controlled and it's a profit business, then of course people are going to be cutting corners, and they're probably not getting, you know, some of the doses that I hear about people taking now. I mean, it just freaks me out. It's scary. But then I'm thinking, but are they really taking that much? Because perhaps what they're taking is only 50% strength or something. Perhaps that explains it.
To me, it's another example of how government intervention and crackdown fucks things up. Like the war on drugs just made shittier drugs, like, you know what I mean, through underground sources. If everything was just regulated and you were taxed on your steroids the same way you could be regulated and taxed on the marijuana joint you buy in Amsterdam, it would be a way better system for everyone.
It would be way better if all drugs were non-criminalized.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You know, or take away a lot of problems. Yeah.
How do you think it should be treated in other sports, you know, like the Tour de France you were talking about earlier, Olympics? I mean, do you think we need to get to a point in the future where steroids are allowed and they're regulated and tested?
My opinion is that, yeah, the guys should be able to do what they want to do, because the media is like pointing fingers at people and, oh, look at this guy's a cheat. You know, but how is he a cheat when everyone else is on the same playing field, you know, on the same level? And, you know, Lance Armstrong now, you know, what a tremendous individual that is. And now he's getting his name, they're trying to drag it through the mud because he used EPO and stuff to, you know, but so was everybody else using it. So what?
Yeah, I had that realization the other day. It came out about Lance, and I was like, oh, he's on drugs. And then I woke up the next day, and I was like, so was everyone else. And he got up the hill.
But he's still the champion, right?
Because he pushed himself.
And we got this saying in bodybuilding, like if you took the steroids away, the guy that's number one would still be number one. Yeah. You know, he might be 20 pounds lighter, but it'd still be better than the other guys, you know? So it's like whatever percent it gives you, it gives it to everybody. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think very few people are training in their particular sport, and they think, oh, you know, if steroids are going to be the answer for me, what happens is they reach the plateau you spoke of, and they take steroids so that they can train harder, so that they can do more work. You know?
Well, when I started in the sport in the 80s, anyone that was taking steroids at that point was a serious competitive bodybuilder, and you know, it was something you considered seriously. I didn't take any for like till I was doing my first competition. You know, I wanted to learn about training, I wanted to learn about nutrition, and you know, get something out of it. Now, there's way more people that take steroids now. It goes across all sections of society. You know, you see people in the movies now that obviously are using steroids. People in hip hop, you know, it's fashionable then to have a physique. These guys are all using steroids.
High school kids now in the
High
States.
school kids.
Yeah.
I got people that come in my gym. They never ever have any intention of going into a bodybuilding contest, but they just see it as a shortcut to get the physique and the look that they want to get. You know. Personally, my advice would be, unless you're competing, I wouldn't really consider it. But times have changed now, and now it's, you know, everybody knows about steroids, right?
You know, one of our fans asked about some of the weeder magazines, the muscle magazines, and how they give training advice, but they don't ever make reference to the drugs. And it's almost like this big elephant that's in the room when they read these magazines.
But isn't that the same with all the sports?
Like,
you know, don't we watch the Olympics and pretend it's all, you know, it's all good, and you know, nobody's using any drugs or anything unless they get a positive drug test?
Yeah,
Absolutely not the case.
I think it's for me it's quite a difficult thing, because you know, when you're a young kid and you're 15 and you're reading a bodybuilding magazine and you read how Ronnie Coleman is doing 30 supersets, you know, but he's taking this whey protein. And then you want to go and emulate that. And you wonder why you can't walk for 3 days afterwards. It doesn't explicitly say Ronnie Coleman is also taking this stack of steroids, etc.
Well, that used to be the case, and now I write for a magazine called Muscular Development. It's probably one of the biggest magazines in the sport, maybe bigger than what used to be the Weeder magazines, which were Flex and Muscle and Fitness. And I got my column in there. And I think I'm the first guy, or I'm the only guy, professional, definitely the only Mr. Olympia that I wrote an article in there about steroids and was totally honest. I even listed what I used, how I used it, what my opinions were and everything. Because I thought, listen, you know, the best policy is just to be honest. But I understand the dilemma, because the question I ask myself is, if I'm totally honest and I put all this stuff down, am I going to be encouraging some kid that's young that shouldn't be doing this yet? But surely it's better to just put it out there and people can make their own decisions, you know.
I agree with you.
And I was able to do that, and the magazine had no problem with that. Where in the past that would have been, you know, it would have been a no-no. Because the Weeder empire wanted to present this image of bodybuilding, and they didn't want us to talk about the steroids, you know.
You once said training, genetics, nutrition, steroids, in that order.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah, because, you know, without the training, let's put it this way. If you sit on your ass at home and watch TV and take steroids, what's going to happen? Nothing. You might get a bit bloaty and hold a bit of water. Nothing's going to happen. But if you just trained and didn't take any steroids and, you know, just ate a normal diet, something would happen, right? You would get some response. And so therefore, training is more important than steroids, you know, because if you just trained and you didn't take steroids, you would get some results. If you just took steroids and didn't train, you wouldn't get any results. You know, steroids don't build muscle. Let's get that right. They repair damage. You've got to go to the gym to create that damage and lift some weights in the first place.